So the suggested resolution of this agenda item is that the 2012 Development Contribution Policy be adopted by Council. So is there any further questions, clarifications, comments on this? There being none, I would ask for a mover, please. Move, Councillor Henderson. Second.
Sorry, I had a question. I just couldn't find my page. Sorry.
Are you seconding or questioning?
No, I had a question.
Okay, I've got a mover. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconder, Councillor Hickling. Before I go to the vote, I'll allow you a question, Councillor Minsher.
It was just to do with the page 50, just the new growth model. Just give us an idea how different it is compared to the previous. That was all. Just the model predicts 1,325 new lots created in the district over the next 10 years, and just whether that's on the low side of just how that model was created.
Mr. Minhennett, can you answer that, please?
Page 50, Appendix 3.
It's obviously not historical data.
I'll just point out that is actually what you adopted when you went out with the draft, and it certainly was considerably lower than the previous long-term plan and the long-term plan before that. Now, off the top of my head, no, I can't recall the exact figures, and I'm a little bit hamstrung because I don't have Mrs. Thrush here, since she's now in Perth. Ariel or Helen, are you able to help me out there?
It's somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of the figure that was used in the 2009 long-term plan. We did a massive, detailed suburb-by-suburb review about 18 months ago in preparing for this long-term plan.
So it's scaled back to the present economic conditions. Conservatively. Did that answer the question, Councillor Minch? Now, who was my mover before? Councillor Henderson? Seconder, please. Seconded, Councillor Hickling. My apologies. All those in favour?
Aye.
So carried. Now, I welcome Mr. Paul. 1 moment, get back here. We'll be going back now to agenda item number 2, which is a presentation from Lakes, Waterways and Action Group. So Mr. Paul White, the chairman, and Mr. Brian Robertson is obviously not here, so Mr. White, Paul, I'll leave you to introduce your fellow friend.
Sure. Firstly, apologies for being slightly late.
That's right, we're running early.
Thanks for accommodating us in a revised agenda. So I'd like to introduce to you Judith McGrath. Judith is one of the trustees of Lakes and Waterways. Lakes and Waterways is a trust, charitable trust, and we're here to present our annual report. So just bring it up on the TV screen. There we are. Okay. So this is up and down, is it, Scott? Can I ask you just to page up or down? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. If we just go up and down, up. It's working now. Here we are. Okay, yeah. Cool. Well, look, thank you very much for Taupo District Council's ongoing support. Every year I'm in the habit of presenting our annual report to the Council, which summarises our activities. So my name is Paul White. I'm the chair of Lakes and Waterways. Lakes and Waterways is a trust, as I mentioned. We have the sort of main focus of our activities are regular monthly meetings, and also submissions to Taupo District Council policies and Environment Waikato policies form the sort of substantive part of our activities, and this summarises those activities for the year. Okay. So Lake Taupo, that's what we're all about. If you look out the window today, that's what you see, huh? Still, it's pretty good on a bad day, I think. So here's some of the aims of, here's some of the goals of our organisation. Seek enhancement of water quality within the Lake Taupo catchment. We've been pretty active in Lake Taupo Variation 5, which is also called the Lake Taupo Protection Project. Unite people for the benefit of protecting Lake Taupo's natural environment, so there's a number of sort of outreach activities that we're involved in. Advocate for, quote, sustainable development thinking in respect to any development within the Lake Taupo catchment. Hence, part of the driver, one of the drivers for the submissions that we do. Education and communication. So as I mentioned, some of the main sort of focus of our group is monthly meetings, and these few slides summarise. These two slides summarising the meetings that we've had. I won't go through those in detail. So, for instance, May last year we had a meeting on impact of leaching under cultivation. I won't go through all the topics of the various talks, but they're many and varied, and we're typically getting experts from the various organisations and other interested parties along to talk about their speciality. They're advertised in the Taupo Times each month. So we've had specialists from Environment Waikato, Whai Regional Council, Taupo District Council, and others. So that's for the first sort of 6 months, and for the first 4 months of this year, those are the talks that we've had. The last one we had was on the long-term plan, Taupo District Council long-term plan. Education and communication again. So one of the sort of highlights of the last financial year has been a meeting that we organised, which really was to sort of celebrate the passage of Variation 6, because it finally went through about a 15-year gestation period, maybe a 20-year gestation period, and got through last year. Or was it the year before? I just quite forget the date right now. But we had a celebration, and we invited as the focus of that was firstly to talk something about the history of the project and how it developed, and then talk about where to from here. So these two slides summarise the people who spoke at that meeting in terms of the history and the where to from here, interspersed with Lake Taupo beef. More on that later. So a pretty fine evening was had by all, and thank you very much to the councillors that came. Rob came, I think. I think there were a couple of others, I just can't quite recall now. And it was a really great evening, really, really great. So, submissions. So we're involved in submissions. We've submitted to Taupo District Council annual plan, TDC long-term plan, Waikato Regional Council annual plan, Waikato Regional Council regional policy statement, etc. Representation and communication. So we're represented on committees, the Taupo Nuiatia 2020 Action Plan, Joint Management Group, and we've been communicating with the Lake Taupo Protection Trust in terms of our activities, particularly thanks to the trust in assisting to organising this sort of celebratory dinner we had last year, Monitor Farm Day report. So that's there's a series of monitor farms in the catchment monitoring best practice for agriculture in terms of nitrogen generation. So advocacy, our message to developers are to request nitrogen budgets for all developments. We want to make sure that the developers are aware of the Variation 6, Variation 5, and are sort of developing their suburbs, what have you, consistent with that. And we're also aiming for best practice for wastewater and stormwater treatment. And so Lake Taupo environment, generally, some highlights for the year. Lake Taupo Protection Trust is doing some excellent work on land deals. So the aim there is to reduce the nitrogen generation from land. And it's quite a complex area involving people's properties, and they've been pretty effective in the last couple of years in terms of their aim, which is to reduce nitrogen generation from the catchment. One of the issues there is that the nitrogen target has moved, as was pointed out in the TDC long-term plan, and so now there's an issue of a bit of a financial difference between the budget and what's required, and so I understand that there's discussions between the Council, EW and Central Government, and I encourage you to fill that gap, as it were. We've also, TDC stormwater monitoring is excellent, as pointed out in the long-term plan. There's been stormwater improvement around the various townships, as I understand, and ongoing work by the Council for low-impact design. Some issues going forward. Lake Taupo Protection Project needs to maintain its forward momentum. It was quite honestly, it was a bit slow to start, but it's really doing pretty well now, we think. It just needs to maintain that momentum, and we have concern about the funding level. Actually, those concerns have been consistent through about 10 years worth of consideration of Variation 6, and one of our original submissions was that there wasn't enough money put up for the project, and here we are. So I don't think that's an unresolvable problem. So environmental marketing, I think, as I've mentioned on various submissions like this one, reports to the council, I think that the Taupo community could do a good job of marketing the Lake Taupo Protection Project for what it provides, in particular Taupo's healthy environment. A few issues going forward, so leverage off the Lake Taupo Protection Project. We've been working to assist 2 local beef producers in their trial of Taupo beef, with a little slogan, grown right here, in local restaurants, and I understand in some of the finest butcheries in Taupo. And it seems that from what they've found, that there is actually a premium on this product because it's grown in this catchment, and it's an environmental good story that people really react to really quite well. It's not unique in the sense that it's leveraging off the Taupo environment. Many other activities are, cycling, running, etc., etc. So I just think that there's an opportunity there to market off that project. I'll leave that as that. She's going forward. So, so marketing the Lake Taupo Protection Project and the local environment, I think, is an opportunity for us. A quality environment is a key economic opportunity. Bike trails, fishing, clean energy, lake recreation, etc. And LWAG is keen that the Lake Taupo Protection Project and local environment is seen as a positive opportunity for the district. LWAG and TDC, thank you very much for your support for the year. We've submitted requesting some forward funding. The funding that we receive from TDC, $5,000 a year, pays for admin services and organising of meetings. And we aim to maintain a positive presence in the Taupo area for environmental values and Lake Taupo protection, and represent Taupo community concerns on water issues particularly. We aim to continue 2012, 2013 and beyond, and as I mentioned, we've requested support from TDC for the period of the LTCCP. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. Questions, councillors? Councillor Williams?
Yes, thanks for your presentation, Paul. And just talking about leveraging off the work that you've done with Variation 5 for the benefit of the entire region, have you thought, as I know that this project has been seen as a trailblazer and an example to be upheld for the whole country, and I know there's many areas such as the Manawatu River and other areas where that have extreme issues around nitrogen, poisoning waterways, etc. Had you thought of becoming consultants or as a form of revenue making for your own project, or of how that you might be facilitators for other projects through the country, or don't you see that as anything that would be appropriate for your body?
I haven't really thought of that. However, some of the sort of side issues to do with the project have involved Environment Waikato getting a prize from Resource Management Law Society for their policy in this area, which is policy as itself is sort of quite innovative in a way, in the way that it approaches trying to control nitrogen discharge from the catchment. I travel the country in my sort of day job and talk about this project, and a lot of people are very interested in it, and I'm very interested in its approaches and in learning from that. In terms of how we as a group could benefit from that, I'm not sure. We're sort of linked, if you like, with kindred organisations in the North Island, and the offer is out there for us to go and talk to those groups, which hasn't been kind of accepted, if you like, but I think there's an opportunity. In terms of leverage, there's also an opportunity in so there's opportunities in low nitrogen land uses per se. So, for instance, the Dock Estate is a low nitrogen land. It produces low amounts of nitrogen because it's largely native forest. So it's relatively low population density and doesn't have intense agricultural activities in it. So one of the plans for this year is to look at maybe a little workshop seminar thing on economic opportunities through low nitrogen land uses, so things like bike trails, tree crops. There's about a dozen different opportunities I think that the catchment has because of sort of aligned to this project.
Any further questions from anybody? Councillor Downard.
Hi, Paul, Judith. I'd just like to say thank you as me as a councillor, but also as a Taupo District Council on the work that you do. You're obviously passionate about it in your group, and the small amount of money that we do put towards funding towards you, I know that it benefits a bigger whole area of our district through the volunteers that you have in your group. So thanks very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. White, and I'm sorry I forgot you. Judith. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of all the councillors and the people of the district. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much for caring about it. The more people that care about it will share it, and the easier the problem will become to solve, because it is a fact that we are damaging the water to a small degree, and we need to make sure that that's absolute minimum. So there is a suggested resolution here that the 2011-12 Lakes and Waterways Action Group annual report be received and them thanked. So I'll take a mover from Councillor Downard and a second from Councillor Williams, and wholeheartedly all those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.